Hi there, it's Archie. I'm back for the ADHD Care podcast. I'm pleased to say we're joined by an inspiring guest today. I've got Hayley Harrison, who's an entrepreneur, ADHD advocate, and co-founder of Organise-D. So Hayley's a productivity specialist who has a passion to help adults, particularly those with neurodiverse needs such as ADHD, to find systems that work for their unique brains. Hayley's also, as I said, she's a co-founder of Organise-D. She's built a business dedicated to providing practical tools, strategies, and resources to help stay on top of their day-to-day organisation, something that could be particularly challenging for a lot of people out there, even more so the ones that have neurodiverse needs as ADHD. Such an honour to have you, Hayley.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
And also, me and Hayley, we've known each other for quite some time, which we will be discussing today, because her son, who is now, how old is his son now?
He's 12 now.
He's 12.
Yeah.
So, I've known your son for quite some time, because we assessed him for ADHD. That was 6 years ago?
Maybe even 7. I think he was 5, yeah. It was a long time ago now.
Yeah. So, and obviously yourself, you then subsequently received a diagnosis of adult ADHD, so that's something that we want to discuss as well.
Definitely.
Today. So, if we can maybe kickstart the conversation with just to find a little bit more about yourself and what led you to create Organise-D.
Sure. So my background's actually in marketing. I graduated from Nottingham University and went straight into marketing. I worked for numerous ad agencies, marketing agencies, and had a really long stint at Sony, where I managed a lot of the Champions League and FIFA World Cup sponsorship, which was amazing. I then moved into a London role, having had 2 children, and basically got to the point of burnout. So I developed pneumonia really badly, couldn't get over it. I'd been trying to do absolutely everything, career-wise, mum-wise, family-wise, and I think I just got to the stage where I was like, I actually can't continue on like this. So I was looking to shift my career into a different path, and was speaking to one of my best friends, who's very similar to me, and we've always been inherently very organised at home, so we've got systems in place. Our friends used to ask us to go over and sort their homes out for them, and I saw a real trend happening in the US with something called the Home Edit, which was a big organisation business doing really well, and I said to her, what happens in the US always comes to the UK, and so it seemed like a prime time to give it a go. So we got together one night, we came up with a business name, and we launched it. It was actually just before COVID hit, which I thought would be awful timing. But actually what it did do is give us space to get the back end of the business ready for launch. We did the website, we started to get content together. We were doing some friends' houses just to get sort of before and after shots. And then in the second lockdown, because we registered our business as a trade business, we could actually go in and work. And it was at a time where people were just so sick of being at home, being amongst their mess. It was causing a lot of mental health problems on all fronts during COVID. But if you have a calm home, usually your mind is a lot calmer. So we found it was almost the prime time to really kickstart the business and to get in and help people with their home lives, and it's sort of gone from strength to strength since then.
That's remarkable. That's truly inspirational, honestly. What does Organise-D actually stand for?
When we first launched it, we wanted to call it organised. Couldn't get organised, obviously. Yeah. But we wanted it to be kind of detox. Oh my God, I've actually forgotten the blooming words now. Detox, de-stress, and sort of calming your home environment. So we very much focused on the mental health element of home organisation and what that meant to people. And we were finding at the time it was a lot of very stressed out mums who were trying to work, juggle children, juggle family. And if they were neurodiverse as well, that just becomes very overwhelming. And as I said, when your home life is chaotic, you find that your life is chaotic, your mind is chaotic, and women especially find it very difficult to switch off from that. So I think we started going in and putting systems in place, which made it really, really easy for parents at home, couples at home, to keep on top of their home life, easy maintenance. The system meant they knew where everything was. The system is put in place to make sure that how they live is very much mirrored through the system. So wardrobes, kitchens, they're designed for that specific family, and it's a very bespoke system that we put in place.
What were some of the biggest challenges that you sort of encountered when you were launching or trying to grow the business in the early stages?
Yeah. I think for me, I'm very good when I enjoy doing something. So it was probably the elements of the business that I didn't find so inspiring, like the back end of everything, that I found the hardest to get in place. I'm very good when I've got a hyper focus. I can absolutely hone in, get it done amazingly. But I think it's the sides of the business that don't interest me so much that I find particularly challenging. And that's why it's worked really well with me and my business partner, Gemma, because we actually work on quite different areas of the business, and the stuff that she does, she excels at, and the stuff that I do, I excel at. So it's a really good partnership.
Yeah, and I suppose you need to have someone you trust as well.
Absolutely.
To go into partnership with. Because I know people who've gone jointly in partnership with someone creating a business, and sometimes it can work well, sometimes it can go a whole different way. So
some people thought we were mad. So myself and Gemma have known each other for 20 years. I went to school with her husband, so I've known her a really long time. We've been best friends for ages. And people were like, oh, you're going to mix, business with pleasure. But I think we've been really good from the outset to establish boundaries and establish key roles within the business that we both do. So there's no overlap, there's no wasted time. We're not kind of doing the same thing. She very much focuses on the finance and business side of things. I do a lot more of the marketing, which is both of our backgrounds and our strengths. And so it just really works.
Yeah. I suppose gone through all of what you just described there, and I think at the point when you set up the business, you weren't diagnosed with adult ADHD.
No, not
so you were obviously struggling with the challenges of like executive function and all the demands that comes with being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
What was that like for you?
Really overwhelming at times. So I am very much an all or nothing kind of person. I'm a massive perfectionist, and I strive to do everything to the best of my ability, which in some instances can be really great. But when you're trying to do everything at a perfectionist level, it does lead to exhaustion. And I've definitely had my ups and downs with the business where I've been like, I don't know if I can continue. I'm feeling really overwhelmed with everything. And then in the next breath, I'm like, no, I'm fine. I kind of pull myself together. I'll get a plan in place. I think I find my overwhelm gets too much when I don't have a plan, or I don't have a system myself in place where I know what I need to get done and when I need to get it done, because I'm very much, everything has the same priority. I find that really tough.
And then subsequently to getting the diagnosis, what sort of structures and things did you put in place to help yourself with your ADHD at that point?
So now I'm much kinder to myself. So now that I have the diagnosis and I understand so much more about myself, if I'm starting a task one day and I'm just feeling completely overwhelmed and unable to do my best, I will actually just be like, right, today's not the day. And so I will move on to something else and come back to it. But I'm really good at time blocking now. So I'm very time poor. I run a business. I've got 2 children with neurodivergent. And I portion out my day in blocks, so I know what I've got to get done, when I've got to get it done, and if for any reason I don't get it done in that block, it moves to the block the next day. So I feel like structuring my day has really, really helped me feel like I'm achieving as well.
I'll come back to your personal journey with your ADHD. Just want to focus more on the entrepreneurship side of it. Let's go back to Organise-D. So break it down to us for anyone who's not familiar with the organisation company. So let's say I'm a neurodivergent client, or any person, because you don't just help clients with neurodivergent needs. So what is it that I'm struggling with that I would want to feel I can utilise your services, and then what is it that you can then provide me? Do I have to be how do you kind of navigate, like, okay, this is what this client needs based on what I'm hearing? How did they reach out to you? Because obviously not a lot of people might be aware of a service like you that they can reach out to.
Sure.
And I see a lot of people who struggle with organisation. They don't know where to start and prioritise things, and they've got family and, things get in the way. So how does that work?
So our focus is very much streamlining the home. So clutter at home is completely overwhelming, with whichever area of the home you're talking about. And we work on every area, but particularly our focus is wardrobes, kitchens, the kind of areas that make your day-to-day life easier. We do quite a lot of playrooms as well. But what we do is we focus on going in, understanding the client and addressing the situations in the house. Now, everyone holds on to items that they don't necessarily use day to day. So if, for instance, if it's a wardrobe that we go in to do, we might have a client that comes and says, it is just so stressful for me getting dressed every day. I can't find what I need. I need to get dressed quickly. And I've got everything in piles. It might be on the floor, rammed into drawers, hanging everywhere. That is a stressful situation. Nobody wants to walk into that every morning. So we do a fact find with the client. We find out how they live, their work, their leisure, what they want to dress in mostly. We then conduct a detox. So lots of our clients tell us when we go in that they have done the detox. We find that 90% of them haven't done a good enough detox, as it were. So it's much easier with a fresh pair of eyes to go through an area of your home and be like, actually, I don't use that anymore. I don't use that anymore. So we take out from that area everything that is no longer needed or loved. What we then do is set about establishing a system. So we make sure that everything's visible, everything's hung on the same hangers, for instance, everything is categorised. So you will have all of your leisure wear together, all of your ball gowns together, all of your underwear together, and everything is sectioned. And we use lots of tricks to make sure it stays like that, such as drawer dividers, clippy hangers. We use jewellery inserts, boot inserts to keep everything in place. And the idea being is that we establish the system, and then the system is really easy for them to maintain. So, for instance, lots of people put piles of clothing in their drawers. It's impossible to see what you have. You never use what's at the bottom of the pile. So we envelope fold everything so you can see it. And what that does is lightens that person. So without all the stuff in the area, whether it is a wardrobe or a kitchen, you know that everything that is in there now, once we've been, is used and loved, and you can find it. And I think that brings a lot of peace to people. Also saves a lot of marriages. We find that there's a lot of conflict in homes where there is a lot of clutter, and it might be one person more than the other that kind of leaves stuff around. But once the system is in place, again, people want to maintain it. People want to live in that kind of clutter-free, organised space because it's so much more enjoyable. And that's for like a atypical person. If you are struggling with ADHD, autism, any of those things, that anxiety at home can be really heightened by chaos. Your mind's already really chaotic, and so if you're going home every day after work, or you're getting up and seeing that every day, that adds to your stress, so it can start your day out really badly. So the system is key, and the system only works because we go in and we really understand the lifestyle of the person. And if there's specific struggles that they are really having, we will address those and work really closely with them to make sure that it's all sorted. And by the time we leave, they are really happy.
As you're talking there, I'm just applying some of the things you're saying into my own personal life, and I'm thinking, when you have children on top of that, where I'm the person that I like organisation in my space. It helps me think clearly, it helps me put me in a good mood. As much as that's the person that I am, but to get everyone on board when you have kids and stuff, where 1 minute the house is tidy, how do you get everyone else on board, particularly when you know children, what they're like? Would they actually be on board with what you're suggesting there? Let's keep things here and declutter and all of that.
Yeah. So we really push for independence in children, and from my own experience, I've got a son with very high level ADHD. If he can't find something in the morning, I am then dealing with a huge outburst. He is stressed, he's going to school stressed. So it's all for children, especially, it's all about labelling. So we bring a label maker in, we divide, so say, football kit, for example, as like our sons are both into football. If they can't find the right top, hey, the world is coming to an end. So again, everything is envelope folded or rolled. My son is now really on board with it. He doesn't envelope fold, but he rolls everything and puts it in so he can see every single top in that row because it's folded. We then put drawer dividers in, which keeps it separate, and then I put a label on the front of it. So he knows where to find something. He also knows where to put something away. So I'm trying to establish those, independent systems with him that he can also take part with. Now, I'm talking about a 12-year-old. Obviously, like a 2-3-year-old, it's different. But I think when that's being used from the start of their life, they then adopt it for themselves. And it just means that as they enter into those kind of teenage years, it's much easier for them to know how to organise themselves in their bedroom. Same in the kitchen. Now, I kind of get my kids to help me unpack the food shopping. We have designated drawers for savoury snacks. We have designated drawers for sweet snacks, and they will help me put those away. And they take pride in that now because they want to be able to see what they've got, so it's not all just dumped in on top of each other. They'll actually put it into kind of rows, which sounds ridiculous, but actually it makes a really big difference for children who are so on it all the time. They want a specific snack, so they can go and find that specific snack. They know where it is. Same with the playroom. We really advocate labelling playrooms, because even if your kids go to nurseries label everything. They then can help put things away. They then know where those things are to get them back out again. And if you start encouraging those systems, it really helps in terms of as they mature.
That is true. You said there about nursery. Yep.
Yeah.
They do.
Labelled.
It is labelled, and it does work.
Yeah.
So it's just about trying to bring that to the home environment as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not sterile. Like, I think it's, we massively advocate that a house is a home. Kids are messy. They're not always going to put things away in the right place. But even for parents, if they're having to kind of come and clear up afterwards, it's so much easier to know, the Lego people live there, the animals, the plastic animals live there, their Duplos over there, their arts and crafts are here, paint is separated from crayons, it's about categorisation of your life almost, so that you are living this kind of streamlined life at home, so that when life outside of the home throws something at you, everything else doesn't fall apart. And I think it's really helped my home life. It helps my marriage, it helps my kids, and was one of the reasons I went into it, because I think for me it was a massive control thing. After I had the children, I wanted my home to be immaculate, and when it wasn't immaculate, I used to get really, really stressed out. And that's almost when my organisation kicked in. At this stage, I didn't know I had ADHD, but I think definitely it was a coping mechanism for me to be able to create calm at home, so my mind wasn't added to in my home life, which is supposed to be calm and tranquil, and
Sure. Yeah. I'm just thinking about hoarding, letting things go. Mm-hmm. Some people, I'll put my hand up to that as well. I'm included. It's a hard one. So I've got into this system of if I'm buying new, I remember I did it a couple of months ago, went to buy a new wardrobe, new outfits, work, and I'm thinking, okay, Archie, there's things that I know in my wardrobe I don't need to keep.
Yeah.
Whereas before I would just keep it just in case I might need it for another time and stuff, but I was running out of space.
Yeah.
So anyway, the point is about hoarding and letting things go. Mm-hmm. That's one major issue a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah,
what would you advise?
So I think that it's always best to have somebody with you as a second pair of eyes, whether that is your husband, whether that is a friend. If I ever do a detox on my wardrobe, which is quite rare because I don't buy very much, I will always get Gemma to come over and do it with me, because sometimes all you need is to hold up something and that person's like, you're never going to wear that again, let's get rid of it. And it's not let's throw it away. When we're really clear about that, we're very much about sustainability. So everything that comes out of somebody's house, if it can go to charity, it goes to charity. If it can go to a textiles bank, it goes to a textiles bank. And if it can be resold, if they've got anything designer or high end, we work with resellers to do that for them. So we take the pain away, and we always remove everything from the house, because that, again, there's no point in me leaving bags of charity in that home. They're never going to do it. So we take it and we work with charity partners, we work with the Women's Refuge. It goes to a really good cause. But I think the way you've got to look at it is, if you are not going to use it, let somebody else enjoy it, and somebody else will really enjoy it. That said, we understand the sentimentality of certain items. So we always advocate sentimental boxes, especially for kids, where you've got, the first baby grow, or, we've seen lots of umbilical cords and, dummies and things like that people do like to keep for sentimental purposes. So we have sentimental boxes that we use, we label the sentimental boxes, and then we leave space so that they can be added to. One thing we find specifically with parents is that they want to hold on to every single school book or every single scribbling from nursery. Please don't do that. Your kid is never ever going to go through and look at old school books. If that is a really big thing for you, keep one book from each year so you can see the progress of handwriting or something like that, and then any beautiful artwork, of course, and certificates and things like that. But your child is not going to thank you for keeping 10 years worth of school books in the loft for a rainy day, because it just means they're going to have to deal with it at a later date.
But how do you know what to get rid of, right? I've got this issue. So, when my kids will bring this painting, drawing, whatever they've done in school, I remember back in the nursery, as parents, we usually stick things on the fridge, don't we?
Yeah.
And you tend to run out of space. So we were, and okay, right, what was, what's the old one we need to take out and put a new one on the fridge and stuff. That's one side of it, but the other side of it is to keep those things, so like paintings or sentimental things that they've done in school, crafts and all of that stuff. It is hard. I know what you mean. You want to declutter, but how much of that can you keep? I remember, obviously, from my parents as well, when I remember going back to my parents, and they gave me a box of all of my school books and stuff that they kept. Some of it's generational. It starts from our parents because we saw them doing it, and they'll sit with us and go, "Oh, look, when you're in year one," and all of that. It's harsh for us to say, okay, just keep 1 yearbook for a year.
Yeah.
Yet we saw our parents doing it and keeping the whole life. Sure. And it's nice when you look back and you can go, I was making progress here. Look at the comments. Yeah. And particularly when you go for an assessment, for example, a diagnosis, some people that, particularly if you're an adult, we're trying to find information from your childhood.
Sure.
I can see how much that information can also be beneficial.
Sure.
So there's benefits to it, but from your organisational point of view, there's downsides to it.
Yeah, so I think, we're all quite space limited. What I would say is that those items shouldn't take up part of your day-to-day home. So using loft spaces, annexes, things like that, always keep it in a box, keep it labelled. Otherwise, we've seen lots of sentimental stuff be eaten through by mice. But I think it's about keeping a selection. There's a really good company called I think it's Doodle Nest, or I can confirm it at the end. But basically, you keep a box of your kids' artwork, you send it off to them, and they make it into a book. So they scan all the items in, they make it into a book, and you can do it by year, and then you can actually get rid of the bulk of the doodles or the artwork and stuff that you've held on to. It's a really good way in terms of space saving to do that. We can confirm that at the end, but things like that are great. But I think it is just being really realistic. If your child has used 6 maths books in a year, are they going to go, or are you going to go back through 6 maths books? Probably not. So keep one. Yeah. Or I'm very sentimental, so I always keep one English book, like written English book from each year for my kids, so that I can see the kind of handwriting progress. And I do occasionally like to show them, look at the progress that you've made. But I personally don't keep maths books. I keep a topic book maybe, but it is just thinking realistically, if you were left with all of this stuff, what's realistically going to be done with it?
Yeah, well, you and me, we've got 2 kids. Imagine if you have more than 2 kids.
Well,
if you have like 5 or 6 or 8
kids. I know, but it's not just kids stuff. It's clothing. We deal with a lot of postpartum mums whose figures have changed since they've had babies, and everyone wants to think, we're going to get back into our pre-baby clothes. But when your entire wardrobe is pre-baby clothes and you can't get back into those clothes yet, that's really depressing. So what we do say is, well, let's keep a selection. And we'll put them away in storage bags so that, when the time comes, we can get them back out again. But also, there is no point in keeping styles that are very in fashion now or very dated, because ultimately, if you are going to go and lose the weight, you're likely to go and treat yourself. So you have to be very realistic about what you're going to go back to. We get lots of people saying, I wore that to a do in 2012 and I really liked the dress. And I'm like, but do you like the style of it now? Well, no, I never wear it again. So let's pass it on. Let somebody else who maybe has a do coming up enjoy that piece of clothing, and it's freeing up space in your wardrobe for the stuff that you really do wear and love. And then it's almost like they need to bounce it off somebody who isn't their internal voice to say, actually, that makes sense. Let's do that, and it makes space for my life now, not your life potentially one day I might. Yeah. I think it's kind of losing what you said earlier. Maybe one day, but it's not about maybe one day. It's kind of about now and making your life work for you now.
That website, I've just looked it up, doodlenest.co.uk. So, yeah.
It's really good.
Oh, wow. Okay. So, that's... so, what is it that they do?
So, you basically... They send you a box and you put in all of your kids' drawings or doodles or schoolwork that they've done that you love, and then they basically scan it all in and put it in a hardback book, and they label the spines, so you could have one for every year of their life, up to my kids don't really do artwork anymore, but when they're young. But it's a massive space saver. So instead of boxes and boxes of drawings, you've got a nice slimline book that you can put on a shelf and then get out for relatives and stuff if the kids want to show off what they've done.
Absolutely, makes sense. I'm looking on the website right now. Definitely recommend.
You're sold.
I am sold.
One click shop.
So yeah, just taking a quick turn. I know we mentioned briefly at the start, just in terms of you parenting a neurodivergent child yourself, which is your son.
Yeah.
So before you got your diagnosis, what was your experience raising a child with ADHD?
So I mean, it's hard. There's no two ways about it. The struggles have changed over the years. He's now in the first year at secondary school, and that's been a very difficult transition for him. But we noticed Finn wasn't developing at the same rate or having different struggles really early. So it was highlighted to us at 2 in nursery. Obviously at that stage they can't diagnose, but he was being monitored that stage, and we went to see a psychologist and everything. He was having regular psychology appointments at that age. At 5 we went privately and got him diagnosed. And it wasn't a surprise to us. So the emotional regulation has always been a really big issue with Finn. Huge rages, very difficult understanding no. Finn also has PDA, which is an autistic trait, which means you can't ask him to do something the normal way that you would. You can't go and clean your teeth. That would lead to a rage. So we had to completely retrain ourselves as adults in terms of how to speak to him, which is challenging. Like, we're all human, and I think it's, you have to be honest with yourself as well. So if you do have a bad day and you yourself, you shout or something like that, that's okay. We have to be kind to ourselves, because I've got a lot of friends with children with ADHD and autism, and it is really difficult. And I think actually it's a very good idea, if you do have a neurodivergent child, to make friends with another parent who does, because it's very difficult for other parents to understand what you go through at home. Sometimes all they see is, your kid playing in the playground. They're like, oh, there's nothing, what's wrong with them? There's nothing wrong with them. And there is nothing wrong with them. It's not, it's a superpower to some extent. And then there's struggles to the other extent. But even now at 12, we have daily struggles. I have to be very careful how things are worded in the house. We have to have checklists, we have systems, we have alarms. Transitioning for him from one thing to another thing is really difficult. So we have to try and streamline that and make that as easy as process as possible. He does game, but we limit that. I find that has a really negative effect on his mental health, his emotional regulation.
That's computer games you're referring to.
Computer games, yeah. He doesn't do too much. Luckily for us, he's really into sport, and that has been an absolute godsend and hyper focus for him. But again, ADHD kids, ADHD adults, we're all perfectionists, and we want to do everything correct all the time. If something doesn't go our way, it's very difficult to cope with that, and very difficult to understand why it hasn't. So, that is a daily challenge for us, as well as school, as well as dealing with siblings, all of those things. So, whilst I think my understanding of ADHD is really good, and we've changed so much in our life, it's a continuous learning process. Mm.
Did you recognise any similarities between your son's ADHD traits and your own before you got the diagnosis?
Yeah, I did, but I would say that there's quite a lot of differences. So I think I've always found it quite hard to emotionally regulate. I'm sort of I can get very tearful, I'm very sensitive, but I'm also chaotic. Like, my brain has been chaos for as far back as I can remember. I'm always trying to do 1,000,001 things at the same time. And I think I always put that down to being a woman. Everyone's like, women multitask, it's fine, but sustaining concentration on one thing, I definitely, when I was looking at all the research around him, I was like, oh my God, this is just me. And I think I didn't put off the diagnosis, but my focus has been very much on helping him. And it wasn't until we were looking to get my daughter diagnosed and I started researching around girls and ADHD. And then that's when a lot more alarm bells went off for me, because I think he wasn't able to mask at school and I was much more able to mask. And that is the big difference, and one of the big problems that we're having now. from my experience is that girls want to conform. Girls really try very hard at school, and a lot of their struggles are internalised, whereas with boys they can't internalise it. And so, you know, Finn was getting so many rages at school. He'd be like throwing chairs, he'd be out of class the whole time, he'd have problems with friendships, he couldn't sit still, he was having massive meltdowns in like maths where he'd get a question wrong and it wouldn't go his way. But with my daughter and with me, I would kind of just sit and be like, oh, I've kind of got it wrong, and I wouldn't externalize that feeling, and I think that's where the two big differences are. Boys just don't have the same ability to mask it in school as girls. So I did manage to get through school. I think both my parents were very supportive. They obviously didn't know I had ADHD, but I had quite a lot of extra tutoring around subjects like maths and science, where you've got a right and wrong answer, which I find are the subjects that my son struggles with the most as well. So yeah, it's definitely been a journey.
Yeah, and I'm fully aware of the journey of, as you know, I've been involved in trying to support Finn throughout that period that you described there. How did you turn some of these challenges into like trying to support your son, being an advocate for him? Because I know obviously you're quite passionate about, you know, diversity through your son and obviously subsequently through yourself. Yeah. What was it that you did? Because I know a lot of parents listen to this podcast might be going through what you described and not know what to do, what to turn to. What was it that you did at that stage, and what you carried on to do to try and advocate for your son?
So I guess it's twofold. We've got what I can control, which is at home, and what I can't control so much, which is at school. So I have been working really closely with our Senko team at school from the moment he stepped foot into primary school. Regular meetings. I've had to push really hard, and it's almost sometimes like the louder you shout, the more you get, and unfortunately that shouldn't be the case, but it is. I did loads of research, so I made sure when I was going into meetings I was well informed about his rights, about what measures could be put into school to help him. So I would say primary school was trickier than secondary school. Secondary school seemed to be much more on board with the ADHD side of things and making sure that they get the education support they need. But this year's been a really big transition for him into secondary school. And it is the case that you have to develop very good relationships with the Senko team, with the teachers, help them understand the needs of your specific child, because every child's needs are different, and ADHD presents differently in different children, as does autism. So with school, I have a really good relationship with them. He has things like class passes, safe spaces. He can kind of come out of class and do classwork in a quiet environment if he's feeling overwhelmed. Those are the measures that the school can control. At home, we have systems in place, for instance, in the kitchen, the wardrobes. I have checklists on his door, so we printed out and laminated checklists so that in the morning he knows what to do when, and what to pack in his school bag, and trying to give him as much independence as possible around that, whilst also obviously overseeing it. So, I mean, it is almost a full-time job trying to manage it. So, life is stressful. There's no two ways about it.
I was just going to say, actually, how do you balance your role as a parent, entrepreneur, and someone also managing ADHD, living with ADHD yourself?
I mean, some days are easier than others. I think I put a lot of pressure on myself. Again, like to be, best mum, best business owner, best friend, daughter, all of those things. I do find it really overwhelming, but I think I have just tried to be much more understanding of myself, much more understanding of my son. The stress levels in our house can be very high sometimes, and if I'm feeling really overwhelmed, it's like taking 5 minutes out and just even locking myself in the toilet and just having 5 minutes of calm, because I find sometimes the overwhelm in my head is so much that I feel like I'm going to explode, and it's like taking myself out of that situation. And actually using that to encourage my son to do the same. So we've got an app that I was talking to you about before called Verdon, if he's having a really tricky time, it's a breathing app. So it's on his phone. I'll literally be like, go and do 5 minutes of breathing, and I promise you, things will feel better. And it always does. He won't always do it, because sometimes he's just like absolutely, he'll push back against me. But I think it is just finding, there's no one answer. You've got to find things that you can implement during the day or during your home life and school life that helps bring you back down a bit. And school, we've talked about this before, school is not designed for neurodiverse children. It's really hard. And actually at the moment, me and my husband are like, we've just got to get him through to GCSEs. And again, that feels like a really long way off at the moment, but we support him with homework. If we're having a tricky time at home, we will speak to the school and say, look, he hasn't been able to do the homework, and they are totally okay about it, but keeping those communication channels open so that he's not going to school getting detentions because he hasn't done homework, getting them to understand that it's been a tricky time. So I feel like I'm flitting all over the place.
No, it's fine. That's fine.
It's finding what works for your kid and for you. And I think that since my diagnosis, the one thing I would say, the big benefit for me has been just to be kinder to myself and to try and understand myself a bit better and not put the pressure on that I always have done for all of my life.
Yeah, if you say that, understanding yourself, sometimes it can feel isolating as well as a parent, because I'm a parent of a neurodivergent child, where it feels like the one angle, what you said about the school, and you feel you're not being listened to, or the system, you're trying to make this system work for your child, but yet you realise this is not just that particular school. Even if you move them to another school, particularly the mainstream schools, they're not, we don't have to sort of go on a sort of bashing them. I know some of them, it's not their fault. They are trying their best with the resources that they have and the number of young people that they have in the classroom to manage the young people that have ADHD and autism and other neurodiverse needs. But the system, I think there needs to be like a review of the whole system. Again, we can spend a whole podcast talking about this. We can just make
many hours, but
there's so many avenues we can go down this route of. But just coming to you with your own self journey of living with ADHD, what was it that led you to seek a diagnosis of ADHD?
For me?
For yourself, yeah.
I think I got to a stage where I'm probably perimenopausal, I am, and I think that the hormone changes in me had massively exacerbated my ADHD characteristics, and I was finding things completely unmanageable. I got to the stage where I was just like, I don't know how to function day to day. I'd become really low with it, like almost in a state of panic the whole time, waking up anxious, feeling sick with anxiety. And I think I just got to the stage where I was like, I just can't go on like this anymore. And so I went down the diagnosis route, got the diagnosis, but I didn't go into medication straight away. As you know, like I wanted to digest what the diagnosis was, what it meant, how I wanted to look back a bit and see how I'd kind of come through life. And I think I then decided that I wanted to try medication to see if it could help me focus, because I think that's what I was massively lacking, was the ability to focus on one task at a time, or even 2 tasks at a time. And then I just wouldn't start anything because I was so in the state of overwhelm of everything that I had to do and the timelines I had to do it in. I just couldn't sit down and do anything. I was almost like in paralysis. And so for me, it felt like I had to change something.
How, if you wouldn't mind me asking, how old were you when you were diagnosed with ADHD?
Last August. So I'm 43. So I was 42 at the time. Yeah. So obviously, I think a lot of people were like, well, you've got this far in life, so why do you need a diagnosis now? And some people are really like skeptical about it. It's a personal decision. It's not really their business, to be honest. And it's something that I needed to do for me. And if I can get help to make life feel more manageable, then why would I not do that?
Were you talking to family at that time before you got the diagnosis, just to get their thoughts and what you were struggling with? Had anyone pointed out to you that if you thought about ADHD? So if you think back to leading to the diagnosis itself, did you have the point where, I don't know, speak to family or your parents or anyone and go, What do you think? Is it something that, I know you could recognize some of the traits in your son, but just from a personal point of view, was there anyone else maybe kind of noticing what we know that's become ADHD, or was it completely like no one else kind of highlighting it, just yourself?
I think my mum and dad, like when I went through like all the questionnaires and everything with my mum, she was like, oh, well, now you say it, you know, now you're looking at it like this. Yeah, absolutely. But I think up until that point, everyone has an idea of what ADHD is. And if you're not hitting those markers, then you're like, well, you definitely haven't got it. And, you know, I wasn't a child who was running around classrooms, throwing things, raging, unable to completely sit still. I could almost manage myself a bit better at school. Looking back now, I definitely didn't fulfill my full potential, I wouldn't say, but I got by. When I sat down and spoke to my mum and showed her like the research that I've been doing, she was like, oh, well, absolutely. And my husband was not surprised. My best friend, my business partner was like, well, of course you do. I think the more I talked about it, the more people were like, oh my goodness, this definitely is an issue that you've got. But I think that there's a lot of societal expectation on what ADHD is. And it's mainly, people think it's boys, young boys, and it's not. You know, there's a lot of other patterns of behaviour that aren't as visible as some of the other traits of ADHD. And I think, again, being a girl and being able to kind of control that a bit more through school, it wasn't a thing back then. Like when I was at school, you were just seen as a naughty kid if you showed any of these traits. Now at least there's an understanding of where it's coming from, why it's happening. But my mum and all my family and my husband and my friends are all really supportive of it now, and I think I've also increased their understanding of it, which can only ever be a good thing.
What we see more from my clinical work is parents reaching out, seeking a diagnosis after their child or children's been diagnosed. I think the understanding of ADHD in adults particularly has been lacking for quite some time. It's growing, which is great, but I think sometimes it's taken them noticing their child going through the journey and then going, wow, okay, I also struggled with this, or I'm still struggling with it, and then looking to then get diagnosed themselves. If you hadn't had a son with neurodiverse needs, would you have realised, it's hard to say obviously, but it's not something that some people might be listening to this and going, some of this, yes, resonates with me, but it's interesting when you have other people, because we have a lot of people being late diagnosed. I remember we were assessing a lady who is in her 60s for the first time, and that intrigues me, how people discover ADHD and what makes them want to then come forward and seek a diagnosis, particularly at that age. And people, there is still this view about, when they look at you, they go, you're an entrepreneur, you're doing well for yourself, you're married, you've got family. What is it that you want to get from a diagnosis? And then that's the why.
Like you said, I think that there's so much more education around it and information around it now. Like, don't get me wrong, if I had it and I hadn't been struggling with it, I would have got to this stage and been, you know, what's the point in, I've lived my life, I'm not having issues now, and that's fine, but I really was. And I think because of the volume of research that I've done around my son and tried to really inform myself about how it presents in different people, and my daughter, who we're currently going through a diagnosis with, maybe I would have just struggled on or put it down to just hormones, or just being, you know, every mum is stressed because we've got so much going on. And when we were at school, there wasn't the information. And as I said, you would have just been seen as like a naughty kid or an underachiever. I got to the age of like probably 40, really started to struggle with my mental health, really started to struggle with overwhelm, more so than I ever had done to that point. And I felt like I owed it to myself to discover the root cause, really.
If you were to go back to the young version of yourself, pre-diagnosis, what advice would you give to yourself?
Get diagnosed.
Get diagnosed.
I actually called my mum when I first started medication, and I was like, I can't believe you didn't diagnose me 20 years ago, because this has just changed my life. I think I would have gone back and just been like, stop seeking perfection in everything you do, because that is one of the things that I have really struggled with and has massively increased my stress levels through life. I was never able to do anything half-heartedly. I put my life and soul into everything. I'd work when I was working in the corporate world. I would work through the night to make sure that presentation or something was absolutely perfect before it was delivered. And in some ways, that's a superpower, because you're working at such a high level, you're just getting stuff done. But getting stuff done at that level all the time only leads to one thing, and that is burnout. And that is 100% true. You cannot be everything to everyone and be perfect to everything. And that's how I've led my life up until this point, worrying. I had massive problems with friendships at school. I was always like, I've got to make sure that they still like me, and like making sure that I was accepted. And I always had friends, but I think that the rejection sensitivity surrounding ADHD is a big thing in girls and boys. Like, I see it in my son every day, and I say to him, and that's actually been quite a nice thing since I got diagnosed. I'm like, I get it. And he will listen to me and be like, were you like this? And I was like, yes. And it gives him reassurance. So actually, one lovely thing for me was the day I got diagnosed, I went home and told my son Finn, and he was like over the moon about it. And he was like, I'm not alone anymore. And it really got me. It was like, actually, if nothing else for me, it's given him the reassurance that someone gets him, someone understands what he's going through.
And you can see what you are doing in terms of in life, where you got to now. You've got your own business, and what you've achieved. And so sometimes that could get lost as well. Sometimes people focus on the negative and feel, particularly as young people, they might think, gosh, I've got this. And I think in society, to some degree, makes you feel that way. You can't achieve anything, you can't be who you want to be. So I think it's reassuring, as you said, like him pointing that out. If I go back to your son quickly, what are some of the strengths you could describe Finn, like, because of his ADHD? What is it that his ADHD brings to him and makes him who he is, and what he's into and what he's good at? So
100% for Finn, it's his hyperfocus. So Finn is obsessed with football. He's really good at it. It's all he wants to do. He will go out in the garden for 3 or 4 hours in the evening and practice left foot, right foot, right foot. His dedication to that and his work ethic is absolutely admirable. I get really emotional talking about it, because it is, for me, it's almost a saviour that he has this. And I do think with any person living with ADHD, if you can find your thing, if you can find your passion, you are going to be absolutely amazing at that, because you will give your heart and soul to that thing. So for him, it's football, which is brilliant also because obviously it's active. He is very intelligent, but will only really apply himself to subjects that interest him, which is obviously very typical of an ADHD and boys. We're not just if you don't like a subject at school, you don't put your heart and soul into it. But he is empathetic. He is really, really good with understanding other children and their needs. So he gravitates towards other people with ADHD. It's a really weird, honing system. Lots of his friends are neurodiverse, and they talk about it, and I think that's brilliant. I think especially with boys, it's really important to keep talking. We've brought our kids up to make sure that they talk about their feelings and don't suppress them. So when he's feeling sad, he'll say he's sad. When he's feeling angry, he'll say he's angry. And I think there's an element of maturity that's coming through now as well, where he is much more able to articulate what's going on with him. But it has to be the hyperfocus, that is the superpower of ADHD. And if you find your thing, I think you're so lucky that you have it.
Yeah, and if you trace all the famous people that have a diagnosis of ADHD, like Michael Phelps or Will.i.am, and
so many footballers,
exactly. And if you trace their journey, how they got into it, so as you say, find your niche, focus. If you have obviously parents that are believing in you, supporting you, that would spearhead you to become who you want to become.
Yeah,
and I think that's what makes the difference there. And what I see as well in young people that are in school. So, for example, where if I compare it to some who go to college and university, things change, life changed slightly. They become more mature.
Yeah.
The demands are not as taxing as when they're in school, where they have to do 10 subjects and
sit down for an hour and a half at a time and look at the front of the class.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, particularly the college stage, and they're doing something practical. They're choosing what they want to do. It's not as long and boring as what school can be for them sometimes. Yeah. So you tend to see a shift there. So there is a bit of a glim light at the end of that tunnel, which is obviously quite assuring for you, just to point that out. And developmentally, they start to become more mature. Coming back to you touched a little bit there on treatment, and you mentioned medication briefly. And I know there's been a whole host of other things you've tried alongside the treatment prior to actually coming and getting the medication itself. As you said, you got the diagnosis and you went through this stage of self-acceptance, coming to peace with the diagnosis itself before you went to seek for treatment, i.e. medication in this case. I know you're still in the early stages of the treatment of medication. If we just let our listeners know, how's that been for you, just the treatment side of it with medication?
It's actually been amazing. So, as I said, like the first day I took it, because it's not like it doesn't have to build up. It's obviously like it's a quick reaction. Is that the word?
Quick release.
Quick release. That's it. I said to my mum, I was like, oh my God, I've actually got so much work done today because I could just focus on it. I feel like my anxiety levels have come down as a result of it. I know it can increase them, but actually for me, I feel like things are more manageable. I feel like I can, in my head, I am not running at 1,000,000 miles an hour. I can actually digest information coming in. I feel like I'm more attentive talking to people. Before I'd have a conversation, there'd be somebody talking over there, and I would be listening to that conversation. And then they'd be like, "What do you think?" And and then you're like, "Oh my God, I haven't listened to anything being said." So I'm much less distracted. I feel like my motivation has increased. Like you said, like I did go down a lot of different routes beforehand, and I've had numerous different therapies my whole life. So I was diagnosed really young with anxiety, and I know we spoke about this, that I've probably got ADHD and anxiety, but a lot of my ADHD traits contribute to my anxiety. So I've been in this kind of spiral. Not everyone wants to try medication, and that is absolutely fine. There's loads of other stuff you can try. For me, I felt like I'd exhausted a lot of the other avenues, and I also have seen in practice the difference it's made to my son in terms of schooling and ability to concentrate, and I needed it. I felt like I needed it.
Yeah, like what you said, I'm glad you mentioned that. Medication is not for everyone, and we're not saying it's a must that you should be on it.
No.
It's an extra treatment to whatever you want to call it that you could utilise and turn to. For some people, it works great. For some, it doesn't, and it's not compulsory. So I'm glad that you're on this journey and you are noticing the benefits of it. I know it's still early days.
I think I mix it with other stuff as well. Like for me, exercise is really important, and that for anyone with ADHD, again, for the mind, for the body, I get out and walk as much as I can. I try and have periods before bed where I'm like calm so I can switch off. And I talk about it a lot. Like I'm a massive advocate for, I want people to know about it. I don't hide the fact I've got ADHD from anybody, because I think the more people that know about it and understand about it means that people with ADHD get much lighter time in life, with teachers, with friends, with family. There are things that are really annoying that I do. I do get distracted. I do half listen to conversations and not engage. So I think it's being aware of what works for you as well. Not everyone wants to have medication, and that's absolutely fine. There's so much else, but I think it's a really personal choice, and I think we shouldn't judge people for their choices in life, whatever it is. I certainly don't want to be judged for having medication.
Absolutely. ADHD often comes with burnout. How do you manage your energy levels, particularly as a business owner and as a parent?
I do find that balance a struggle. I think, again, time blocking has really helped me focus on different parts of my life daily. So I'll block a time for emails, I'll block a time for like client proposals, I'll block a time for housework, I'll block a time for food shopping, and then it's school pickup. So, the day is actually quite short for parents. When I'm working in homes, I have wraparound care. I find that really stressful, like just juggling the childcare, but every mum finds that really stressful. But I think now I find social situations quite overwhelming, and I think I've only really realised that quite recently, and that they contribute to my burnout because I'm having to concentrate so hard on like a dinner party or going out to dinner or socialising, which I do quite a lot with work. So now if I feel myself getting to that stage, I'm really good at going upstairs, like sitting on my bed, doing a bit of breathing, or going and watching some rubbish TV for half an hour. And I'll explain to my children, I'll say to them, Mummy just needs half an hour to decompress and I'll be right back, but I just need that half an hour. And if I explain that to them, they're much better at understanding it. I would never have done that before had I not had the diagnosis, because I know that's what my body now needs.
What's the relationship with perfectionism and procrastination, and do they show up in your kind of role as a parent, just on a day-to-day, or even like running a business?
Every day. It's always there. It's always niggling at me. I'm always like, should have done that better, should have said this, should have said that. Why did I do this? Why did I do that? And I'll overanalyze everything. And I think I just have to accept almost now that that's how my brain's programmed, and just have a personal acceptance that is probably going to be a struggle that I have in life, and it's just managing that struggle.
And sensory overload as well.
Yeah, 100%. And that's again, since I got diagnosed, I'm really good at taking myself off into a quiet place, but I wouldn't have done that before, because I'd just been like, you just got to keep going, got to deal with it. Like, everyone has to deal with it. But it is really, when you get to the stage where you're like, my brain can't take anymore, you're going to go one of two ways. And if you can recognise it and bring yourself back down, then you just have to incorporate that into everyday life.
And that's the executive functioning fatigue as well that people describe. Like what you said, I think it's about societal pressure. You're meant to just get on with it. And that's, I suppose, as an adult, that's what we're taught. Everyone struggles. You're a parent, that's what it's like. And I think we should give grace to each other and understand that you are also entitled to feel burnout, and to actually say, I am feeling overwhelmed, without being judged or fear of, or I'm going to be seen as a failure.
Yeah. I think the society we live in now, there's so much demands put on parents, on children, on everything. The world has changed so much, and I think we are, as you said, we live in this society where we're like, just get on with it, just keep going, just do that extra bit of work, do that extra bit of childcare, all of it. And there's no let up. We don't let ourselves have any time to recuperate. And especially like most of my friends, they've got 2 full-time working parents. They're trying to juggle that with childcare, with families, our mums and dads, and the care that we need to give them. And we've almost screwed ourselves over a bit with trying to do everything. But I do think that our kids' generation almost have to bring it back down a bit and just be more realistic about what the human body and the human brain can cope with. Because at the moment, you've got half of society without, the neurodiverse needs, near burnout. And you add in the layer of like ADHD on top of that, and you are, it's unmanageable. So I think it is society changing its thought processes as well, and just being like, it is okay to not do everything. It is okay to not respond to that message right now. If you're overwhelmed right now, leave it and do it later. But we've got this constant need to do everything right now. And I'm like that. I get what that's like, but I think understanding that is a societal pressure, and then bringing it back into managing your own life is really important.
And being able to say no.
Yeah, that's a really bad trait of ADHD, is we just want to say yes to everyone and everything. Yeah.
What advice would you sort of give to parents of neurodivergent children who may also suspect that they might have ADHD themselves?
That's a good question. I mean, for me, I wanted to know what I was dealing with. And I think the reaction from my ADHD child to know that I had it was that of reassurance for him. So for me, I personally would get a diagnosis. You don't have to do anything with that diagnosis. You don't have to go down and get medication. You don't have to change anything, but there's something really empowering about knowing. The chances are, from a genetic point of view, my daughter's probably, my husband's definitely got it. He hasn't been diagnosed, but Archie, he's got it. Anyway, you've met Wes.
Yeah.
But I think being able to talk to your neurodiverse child at a level where you've both got experience and you both get each other is really beautiful. And I would never, ever go back, and I don't regret getting diagnosed at all. It's only been a positive thing in my life, and it's been a really positive thing for Finn.
Well said. What tips would you share with other entrepreneurs out there or working professionals with ADHD who struggle with organisation and productivity?
I think time blocking is great. I think it's about making sure that you are not trying to fit so much in your day that you don't have any time for quiet, because I think the quiet time is so important for recharging your brain. You can't have this chaotic brain working 24/7 and expect to feel good. You can feel awful with it, and there's days where I'm like, I just absolutely exhausted, can't think straight. And that doesn't just go away when you realise you've got ADHD or you're medicated or whatever. You're going to have bad days. But I think that breaking everything up into bite-sized chunks rather than having huge projects looming over you is the only way that I can cope with it. I have lists that I need to do broken down by project, because I don't know whether other people experience this, but I forget things all the time. And then I worry so much about letting one of those things go. So I find if I've got it written down, it's a good point for me to refer back to. But I have the biggest thing for me has been this time blocking of my day has meant that I feel like I'm achieving a little bit of every part in my life.
And also being kind to yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, that has only come through diagnosis. It's like an acceptance that is the way my brain functions. And so I can't change that. The only way I can change is my treatment of that. And so now I'm I am at a state of overwhelm. I now am the only person that can change that. So then it's taking responsibility for yourself in that moment.
Yeah. So just sort of before we round things off, just looking ahead, so what's next for you and Organise-D? Any exciting projects in the pipeline?
We do. So we've kind of moved into a space planning place in the market. So we've been working with loads and loads of clients over time. Those clients are now kind of moving on, building new houses, doing renovations. And so we're going in now and helping them make sure that the space they're moving into is maximised for their needs. So we're helping do the space planning for kitchens and wardrobes specifically. They're the two biggest pain points, I would say, in the house. We're not making it look beautiful. We very much structure it. So we know that whatever doors are put on, that is your interior designer or your joiner's decision. But we know your wardrobe and your kitchen are going to fit exactly into that space in your renovation. So I really enjoy doing that. I think it takes a lot of stress out of life. And we've done so many jobs now where people move into beautiful spaces and they just don't work for the family, which is heartbreaking. We are ramping up our social media. We are doing a little bit of TV work coming up, which is exciting. I think just... we've got a team now that work with us who are brilliant, and they are kind of coming up and taking on more and more of the work so that to free us up a bit more for the business strategy side of things. This year looks really good. We're really excited about it.
I'm pleased. It sounds like it's doing really well. And you've grown since you started. So how many years has it been now?
It's been 5 years now, nearly.
5 years?
Yeah.
Starting lockdown. Right.
Yeah. So,
wow.
God, I can't believe that was 5 years ago, lockdown. But yeah, it's been a really big journey, but I feel like I've learned so much about business and people, especially people, through this business. And we've done one of the most interesting projects we did was one of our existing clients. She asked us to move her daughter out of university into her first flat to establish the systems in the flat. So she has ADHD and finds it really hard to stay organised. I get a massive sense of what's the word I'm looking for? Pleasure out of doing something like that, because I really feel like it's making a difference to her life. So we went in, put everything into the right places in her flat and labelled everything, so we know she's off to the best start for her new job that she was starting. So things like that I really enjoy. I really enjoy it when it is someone neurodiverse and I know that what we're doing is going to have the biggest impact on their life.
Yeah. Do you check in with your clients? So let's say you've gone in, you've helped them, they've got systems in place. Do they call you back?
Yeah, sometimes. So depending on what the job is, clients are always messaging me, and if they do something at home where they've done a bit of organisation themselves, they send me photos, and I absolutely love that because I feel like it's almost contagious. You do one area of the house and you realise the difference it makes to your life, and then you go and do another area. So the majority of clients we work with, we end up doing the whole house, and the only times we really come back is when the seasons swap, and we'll go and rejig the wardrobes, put a new system in for winter or summer, or they've moved house and we go and move them into a new house. But all our clients stay in touch, and lots of them have become really good friends, which is really lovely. And they'll text us about purchasing now. They're like, "Do you think should I get this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, just get it." It's really nice. But yeah, we don't often go back to do kitchens again and again, or wardrobes where we're not seasonally swapping things again and again, because once the system's in, it's there for the long run. Unless your life dramatically changes, we like to think that we're kind of we've done our job, and now it's just a maintenance thing.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, well done you.
Yeah, thank you.
You're doing a great job. So where can people find you? In terms of if they want to know more about yourself, about your work, and how can they connect with you?
Sure. So we are on Instagram. We are Organise_D on Instagram and Facebook. We're on TikTok, Organise_D, and obviously we've got a website. We're actually just redoing the website at the moment because I built the first one myself during lockdown, and it definitely needs a facelift. So we've got someone doing that for us at the moment. So yeah. We've got our email address and phone numbers and everything on Instagram and the website. So if anyone does, or if anyone just wants some advice, I'm always open to a phone call. We can always help. You don't always have to enlist our services. I just really enjoy helping people manage their spaces at home and making sure that it's working and maximised for their needs. And we like to think, me and Gemma, that we're alleviating some of life's stresses by, when you come home from work or from school and your house is calm, it is such a nice place to be. Whereas if there's stuff everywhere and you don't know where to find anything, you're not coming home to what should be your sanctuary.
Yeah, it's a bit like my house right now.
Do I need to come over, Archie?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Honestly, clean the house, and then the next day the house is back to where it was, even worse.
I know, but that's kids, isn't it, as well? Yeah,
exactly. Website-wise, just tell our listeners again about your website. What's your website handle?
It's www.organised-d.com.
Yeah. And organised with an S, not with a Z.
With an S, UK spelling only.
UK spelling only. Just make sure you get that right. Absolute pleasure having you, Hayley, as a guest on our podcast today. And I wish you well with your journey. I hope people will obviously listen to you and follow your journey as you grow.
Thank you.
And good luck to your son as well, Finn. And you, no doubt you will become a professional footballer one day.
Hopefully one day. Thank you so much for having me.
Excellent. Good to see you.
Thanks.
Take care. All the best.
Bye.
Take care.